Hello, welcome my to channel Reading Book 9084. Let's go. Support to my channel. Chapter 6. I had happened unless the expected image had come all his life. It seems to him he had been waiting for this to happen. He was walking down the long corridor at the ministry, and he was almost at the spot where Julia had slipped the note into his hand when he became aware that someone larger than himself was walking just behind him. The person, whoever it was, gave a small cut, evidently as a prelude to speaking wisdom, stopped abruptly and turned. He was O'Brien. At last they were face to face, and it seems that his only impulse was to run away. He heart-bound violently. He would have been incapable of speaking O'Brien, however, friendly hand for a moment on Wisdom's arm, so that he two of them were walking side by side. He began speaking with the peculiar grave courtesy that differentiated him majority of inner party members had been hoping for an opportunity of talking to you while reading one of you Newsweek articles at the time the other day. You take a scholarly interest in Newsweek, I believe. Winston had recovered part of his self-passion. Hardly a scholar, he said, I'm only an amateur. It's now my subject. I have never had anything to do with the actual construction of the language. But you're right, very gently said O'Brien. That is not only my own opinion. I was talking recently to a friend of yours who is certainly as expert. His name is slipped my memory for a moment. Again, Winston heard stray painfully. It was inconceivable that his was anything other than a reference to Sam. But Sam was not only there, he was abused and unperson. Any indefinable reference to him would have been morally dangerous. O'Brien remarks obviously have been intended as a signal, a coward by showing a small act of the thought crime. He had thrown his two of them into accomplice. They had continued to stroll slowly down the corridor, but now O'Brien halted with the curious, disarming friendliness that he always managed to put into the guest through. He rested his spectacle on his nose. Then he went on. What I had really intended to say was that in your article I noticed you had used words which have become obsolete, but they have only become to very recently. Have you seen the 10th edition of the Newspeak Dictionary? No, said Wisdom. I didn't see it had been issued yet. We are still using the now in the record part. The dance edition is not due to appear for some months, I believe, but a few advance copies have been circulated. I have on myself. It's my entry. You do look at it. Perhaps very much so, said Wisdom, immediately seeing where this intent. Some of the new developments are most ignominious. The reduction in the number of verbs, that is the point that will appeal to you. I see. Let me say, shall I send a messenger? Do you wish the dictionary, but I am afraid I very will forget anything of that kind. Perhaps you could pick it up at my flat at some time that suited you. Wait, let me give you my address. They were standing in front of the telescreen, somewhat absent-mindedly. O'Brien filled two of his pockets and then produced a small leather-covered notebook and a gold ink pencil. Immediately benched the telescreen in such a position that any who was watching at the other end of the instrument could read what he was writing. He scribbled an address, wrote out the page, and handed it to Weston. "I'm usually at home in the evening at 5. If not, my servant will give you the dictionary." He was gone, leaving Weston holding the scrap of paper which his time there was no indeed to consult, nor less he carefully memorized what was written on it, and some hours later threw it into the memory hole along with a mass of other paper. They had been talking to one another for a couple of at the most. There was only one meaning that they could possibly have. It had been contrived as a way of telling Winston now very address this was necessary because, except by direct inquiry, it was never possible to discover where anyone lived. There were no directories of any kind. "If you ever went to say me, this is where I can be found," was what O'Brien had been saying to him. Perhaps there would even be a message concluded somewhere in the dictionary. But at any rate, Unseen was curtailing the conspiracy that he had dreamed of the exile, and he had reached the outer edge of it. He knew that sooner or later he would only someone, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps after a long delay. He was not certain what was happening was only the working out of the process that had started years ago. The first step had been a secret, involuntary thought. The second had been the opening of the diary. He had moved from thought to word, and now from words to action. The last step was something that would happen in the ministry of love. He had accepted it. The end was contained in the beginning, but it was frightening, or more exactly, it was like a foretaste of this, like being a little less alive, even a veil. He was speaking to O'Brien when the meaning of the word had sunk in. A chilly, shuddering feeling had taken possession of his body. He had the sensation of stepping into the dampness of the grave, and it was not much better because he had always known that the grave was there and waiting for him. Chapter 7. Winston had woken up with his eyes full after Julia rolled sleepily against him, murmuring something that might have been, "What's the matter?" I dreamed it began and stopped sure I was too complex to be put into words. There was the dream itself, and there was a memory connected with it that had swum into his mind in the few seconds after waking. He lay back with his eyes shut, still studying the atom hereof. The dream was a vast, luminous dream which his whole life seems to stretch out before him like a landscape on a summer evening after rain. It had all accurate inside the glass paperweight, but the surface of the glass was the dome of the sky, and inside the dome everything was Below the viscular supply, which on closely into interminable distance, the dream had also been comprehended by indeed, in some sense, had consisted in a gastro made by his mother and met again year later by the Jewish woman he had sent on the train to shelter the small boy from the builder the helicopter below them both to pace. Do you know he said that until his moment I believe I had murdered my mother. Why did you murder her? Said Julia, almost asleep. I didn't murder her, not physically. That's enough. Goodbye.